We all have stories about money. Some are funny, some are embarrassing, others make us cringe, while others leave us empowered. Far too often, these stories are left unshared. Money is such a taboo subject, but quiet as it's kept, our experiences with money are more common than we think. When we share stories, we feel less alone in our experiences, and we discover new strategies for navigating life with money. I'm your host, Melissa Mazard. You're listening to Memories of Money, where our guests reveal their financial secrets and where you will learn practical lessons and principles for a life of financial health and prosperity. Our journey with money begins early, which is why financial education is essential from the start. In this episode, we talk to a young Marine veteran whose early life lessons shaped his smart financial decisions. By starting strong, he's building a solid foundation for wealth and financial responsibility.
I had an ear infection and my mom took me to the doctor, and when it came time for getting that bill and that payment ready, she just broke down and was highly upset. And at the time she had 3 kids and money wasn't always there. We had a lot of stuff, whether it was the house or vehicles or a pool, whatever it might be, but it seemed like we were always short on money when it came to those emergency items on the budget. I know I had a lot of family members who were more well off, but money didn't spread like that. It didn't get directed towards emergencies or any issues that I was facing in life day to day. It would be more of like, okay, well, so-and-so's got 3 businesses and they're able to have their own money and not worry about supporting us. We were in a family unit of 5 between my mom, my stepdad, and my 2 little sisters. We had some hefty grocery bills. We weren't going out to eat all the time. So we managed on our own, but it wasn't perfect. And when you're at what I would typically say is like lower middle class, like you're scraping to not go below the poverty line, sometimes it can be difficult to see because sometimes other people only see what you have going for you versus what the negative impacts of your financial situation might be. So when we'd have to ask for money or seek family members that might be able to help us, it was always feeling like a burden and the feelings of guilt for not having what we needed to survive or what we needed to take care of certain things. For instance, my sisters had surgeries that the medical bills would really rack up, or even just day-to-day things like field trips and school stuff. It would get taken care of, but you could feel the tension when those situations came up. We all grew up in Florida. For reference, I grew up in Putnam County, which is one of the poorer counties in the state. I had my grandma in Gainesville. She had a big house. She had a business. She ran a laundromat that now my uncle runs, and he had a mobile home company, and he has a couple other companies that he runs, and his kids run companies. Seeing that thriving aspect and seeing people like really successful running businesses and taking care of all of their financial needs just off of their own hard work, that's one thing. But then also like seeing 2 parents on 9-to-5s and taking extra work when they can, or having side hustles and understanding how like that kind of works. It was a lot of perspective for me growing up as a kid. And I knew the importance of money very early on because I knew you got to take care of the necessities up front. So if you're not eating and sleeping and taking care of yourself, it's much harder to take care of all of the other money things that might come up in life. It's one thing being a younger kid, but then I gained a lot more information and a lot more knowledge than I probably needed when I was in my later teens and getting ready to move out and take care of myself. I started to see the financial issues that would come up and who was helpful and who wasn't. Some people were more than willing, and we were so thankful for their help. But also the more money that you have to ask from people who have it, you start to feel that guilt and that feeling of either unworthiness or just not feeling like you've either earned that money or that you deserve that help. That's something that I tell a lot of people around me. It's like, if you need the help, ask for it. Don't worry about the repercussions so much of like them feeling like you're a burden on them. If you need help, there are resources, and just because someone isn't willing to offer you help doesn't mean help's not available somewhere. I definitely learned a lot from seeing how people respond to being asked for money, because sometimes it wasn't always perfect, and they did tell us, we can't do that, and I don't know where you're asking me, you have so and so XYZ, why can't you do it yourself? That can be very off-putting, and it can put you in a negative headspace surrounding your financial situation. No bad blood with money, it's just a lot of lessons learned. I know in my mom's situation, financial independence wasn't really solidified. So there's a lot of times where it would become an issue either in the relationship, or she'd be concerned about something money-wise and the partner wouldn't be as concerned. So they're still going and spending money that we don't necessarily have, and it's becoming an issue. And we're not set up to where she can just leave. She's financially dependent on that person, and they're not financially responsible. Financial abuse and financial irresponsibility, those topics started coming into play, and understanding you can't depend on your partner always 100% to be the provider, especially if they're not financially responsible or financially literate. You have to also protect yourself. Self-protection and self-preservation are huge in the finance world, because if you allow someone to take full control of your financial situation, it can end up being good at first, but it can also destroy everything that you've set up for yourself. Watching my mom's relationships, that was like, okay, never fully lean into a partner financially, like always have a backup or some way to take care of myself, because if we're both not straight on finances, that's like a huge problem, and it's only going to lead to bigger issues in the future. A lot of my interactions in peer level environments. So when I was in school, I didn't have all this nice stuff. I had what I needed. So I tried not to center my mindset around materialistic things. And I tried not to focus on what I didn't have, but rather be thankful for what I did. I was dead and determined to not spend my parents' money, because I understood it doesn't come easy. They have to work hours and hours to take care of all three of us. So I tried to kind of minimize how much money that I was taking up from the family. And I had times when I felt like the burden, and I didn't really want to ask for things. Like when Christmas would come, I'd be like, I don't want anything. And I still do it sometimes now, where I'm like, I don't want to be showered with gifts like that. But I always felt taken care of, and I felt like I had what I needed for the most part. I was on my bicycle pedaling to businesses, dropping off my job applications and stuff. Ended up mostly working under the table. Not a lot of people wanted someone that wasn't out of high school yet. I did end up taking some work before I was out of school and trying to build up my own money, shop for my own groceries. I felt that urge to be independent from my family's financial situation, so that I could just take care of myself and they wouldn't have to worry about me as much. That's the earliest trying to break away from the family unit kind of financial independence. That's where I started getting a taste of that. Initially, I was so against the idea of enlisting in the military. I was being pressured by my mom's boyfriend to find what I wanted to do and succeed in school and accomplish things so that I could get a good job. Understandable motives to put pressure on a kid to like succeed. I was talking to this Army recruiter. In between talking to the Army recruiter, I stopped next door. The Marine recruiter was in. Like any good Marine recruiter, he didn't seem to care that I was there. And he was like, yeah, if you're interested, we can get you set up to go take a test, but we don't really need you. And I was like, all right, okay, I'll prove you wrong. That's cool. So built-in defiance from childhood. I was like, okay, I'll go this route. Went through the processing. Took a long time, actually. So I was still struggling to deal with situations at home, whether that's both of my parents' history of substance issues, primarily alcohol. And that's where a lot of money was going to. And I was trying to graduate high school, do everything that I could to keep my grades up, but grades were slipping. I was fighting my way to the finish line to graduate and then see what the deal was with the Marine Corps, see if I could actually make it. And eventually I did get my ship date and I was able to go to Paris Island, which is where I first encountered a paycheck job. I had to learn a lot about where I wanted to go retirement planning wise. So some bigger adult questions came into the picture. I was still dating my wife at that point. point. So I was concerned about, okay, I know eventually she'll end up on a base with me. How do I take care of her, make sure she's set up financially? A lot of lessons from the military ended up being the lessons that I carry out of the military as far as my finances. I know that a lot of military members get taken advantage of financially. So it became a big priority in my life to like do what I could to learn as much about money as I could while I was in the military. In 2019, I had been on Okinawa in Camp Courtney just under a year, or roughly a year at that point. We had a senior officer who was in charge of our unit. He was a huge financial role model for a lot of people at the unit, and he spoke to us about our finances, whether it was directly one-on-one or it was in a group. He would host a little financial Friday in like our break room, and he would talk about home buying and how to navigate a joint account with your spouse and how to make sure that you're both set up for success. The big one for me was retirement accounts, because in the military you get set up on TSP, which is essentially a 401k, understanding that if it's sitting there and it hasn't been allocated to all the funds that are available for your choice, it's not going to grow as heavily, because what they did at the time was no matter how much money you put in, if you didn't have access to the account and you weren't moving it, it was sitting in a slow growth government bonds. So people would get out after 10, 16, 20 years even, and what they had been investing, whether it's 5% or a larger portion of their check, those investments might not have grown the way they expected them to because they didn't access the account or they didn't pay attention to it. I haven't had a whole lot of crazy negative impacts on my finances, but I definitely have made mistakes. Not getting access to that retirement account until I was already a year in the military definitely set me back some. Buying a Hyundai, I'll put that one on the mistake board, because the maintenance, while it's a reliable and durable car that has survived a couple dings and bruises, I had to learn some lessons car-wise. I definitely wasn't prepared for maintenance costs. So I think I should have set aside more money. Instead of just paying car down, I also need to make sure I have a fund to take care of maintenance for it. I jumped into my first home at the end of my military contract, and just all of those things that you don't think about initially, like, oh, it'd be nice to have a car, it'll be nice to have a home. But then all of the maintenance things start to pop up and you're like, okay, this is a responsibility. It's not just all fun and games. The income difference. This is something that a lot of people talk about, but transitioning military, you're not guaranteed to have the same cushion and amount of money that you're making before. It's great to say, oh yes, this is a super transferable skill set, I'll be able to do this somewhere else. It's another thing to actually go apply, get the job, make the same amount of money. So I, for instance, make a lot less money than what the military quality of life and level of income that I had before. I'm having to do essentially more with less. I've had to learn how to better allocate my budget and determine what money do I need and what money do I want to have in order to feel comfortable, and how do I get there. We brought in my brother-in-law. We have him living with us. That's an additional responsibility that's on there, and we have to make sure that he's set up and he learns the money lessons before he jumps out into the world. So that's a thing that's been going on for a couple of years. Definitely a learning lesson there, and trying to navigate a teen mind with money. I think we're all still learning and still also trying to teach ourselves and teach others around us. It's a continuous cycle on that. As far as like mantras or things that I carry forward with me now that are kind of reminders of what I need to take care of money wise, I definitely just remind myself, one, stay humble, and two, if it's something that I want, then I'll have to work for it, and it's achievable. It's never out of reach. This is one thing that I've been trying to bring in to my daily reminders, is there's not a shortage on money. It's just how hard do I want to work to achieve where I want to be. And that's not to say that money isn't tight all over the world, because it definitely is, but there are ways that we can overcome the challenges that we face, and it's never too late to start worrying about your personal finances and start tacking on new strategies and learning how you can get out of either a negative situation or improve a good one. Have a plan. Not only have a plan, but if you're not already started, start now is what I will say. I will say start now. Accomplish something today that you either have needed to accomplish or that you feel needs to be something that you're more focused on. Start now and start getting after your goals today, because if you don't, you're just going to keep saying, okay, one day, or I'll do do that, but not right now. If you don't do it and you put it off, it'll never get done. So just start now, get after it, take a step back and look at the big picture. I always start kind of in the budget realm, what's going out and what's coming in money wise. And if one of the numbers is bigger than the other and you're not happy about it, why? And you can start chipping away at the problems there. And then you can look into, okay, what options can I bring in that help me move faster in the direction I want to go? You can always bring in new things that you haven't tried before. And if they work, great. Now you have a new positive in your life. If they don't, okay, at least you tried it and move on to the next thing. I am much more of the planning type, and I don't like to set goals until I have determined what's realistic and what's not. You can find me at Spare Change Podcast or Dawson Black on LinkedIn. I'll share most of my financial discussions there, as well as on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, all of the distribution platforms that Spotify offers. You can hear me ramble. Hopefully some of it makes sense, and I look forward to recording more in the future.
Thank you, Dawson, for sharing your journey with money, through overcoming early childhood memories to building wealth as a young veteran. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know with a like and review, and stay tuned for the next one.